Good evening and welcome to Portishead Town Council. Seems like it's been a while since we've been here last. I hope everybody's had a good summer. Unfortunately, the weather hasn't been so good, but that's life. We've got a slightly different format tonight because we've got a couple of guest speakers in, which is North Somerset Highways, is it? And the Lions. So I think North Somerset are going to go first. Are you ready? Yeah, no, please do. Come on up.
Okay.
I think it's working.
Yep. So we'll just do some introductions. Do you want to start, Rob?
Yeah, my name's Rob Thompson. I think several people around the table have met me before. Worked for North Somerset Council for a number of years in the highway teams. My current role is the head of infrastructure for the bus service improvement plan.
Yep. Hi, I'm Emma Walters. I'm the Senior Transport Planner. I've been at North Somerset for 1.5 years and I'm currently leading on the small transport hubs and now looking into the large transport hubs, and that's all part of the bus service improvement plan.
And my name's Hannah Young. I'm a councillor on North Somerset District Council. I'm the executive member for Highways and Transport.
Give a quick introduction to the bus service improvement plan. I think most of you are familiar with BSIP. We were very lucky at North Somerset a couple of years ago to secure 2 significant government grants for improvements to our bus services. One of those is a revenue grant intended to work with the bus operators to lever improvements to the services directly, additional changes to the services, some support towards the commercial operators. What we're here to talk about tonight is the capital grant, which is intended to improve our highway infrastructure. So that's actually, can we move a slide on? I'd forgotten to do that because I'm not in charge. But we have, a significant capital grant to look at improvements to our bus services, and we're doing that in a number of ways. I'll talk about these in a moment, but trying to make our bus journeys faster through removing some congestion hotspots in our network. But also, what we're really here to talk about tonight is our passenger infrastructure. So improvements to our bus stops, our bus shelters, and some key locations across the district. Some significant upgrades, what we're calling hubs, where we can hopefully bring have hubs where people's journeys on walking, cycling, they can interlink with the bus services at key locations where we think there's a real opportunity to try and lever increases in patronage through those sorts of measures. The targets on the slide here are what we're really trying to do through BSIP, using both grants. The bus journey times are really key. We want to try and improve our bus journey times. That really helps. We, as bus passengers, of course, we all want faster journey times, but it also helps the bus operators operate their services more commercially, which secures their sustainability into the future. Punctuality is a key driver. Again, our communities tell us they want more punctual bus services. Of course they do, but it's if we can achieve more punctual services through removing some of the variability in removing congestion from the network, then again, hopefully we can increase the number of people using the bus services and again make them more sustainable. We want to increase the number of people using the buses and want to increase the satisfaction of people using our buses. And if we can do all these things, then by moving people away from car journeys onto buses, and by having a more green bus fleet going forwards, then this is all a key part of our drive towards decarbonising our transport system as well. So fundamentally, that's what BSIP is trying to do in a nutshell. Anything to add on that? No? Right. Next slide, please. So before we go into the details of bus the proposals themselves, we just wanted to touch on a few things which probably we thought we might be raised as questions later anyway. So in terms of the bus services in Clevedon, as I say, it's not really part of my role to work directly with the bus companies in terms of service improvements, but our colleagues do. So we've just got some notes being shared here. The X4 service, obviously the key Portishead Bristol service, is currently running at a 20-minute interval frequency during the day. That's due in part to the BSIP funding from the revenue grant. So that's ongoing. Perhaps describe a little bit later how we hope to sustain that into the future through the capital investments. On the X5, we're seeing some challenges with increased traffic. It's a very long route, so it's susceptible to problems along the whole route from Weston-super-Mare to Portishead. Again, we're hoping that the capital schemes we'll be implementing over the next year or 18 months will contribute to solving those problems. And in doing that, will help make that service as sustainable as it can be into the future. The X10, I believe, has had some tweaks recently to the timetabling. I'm aware of some feedback, particularly from college students using it to access the Filton campus, that the timetable changes have some issues with them in terms of sort of evening pickups after the college closes. So our colleagues are working with the operator to try and resolve that problem, and we hope to have some more news for you on that soon. I don't today, unfortunately, but we're very much aware that it is an issue. In terms of the bus priority scheme, so as I said a minute ago, we've got the BSIP capital funding is about congestion reduction at key locations, trying to get buses through those congested areas more quickly and more consistently than they do currently. We're really here to talk about the passenger infrastructure side, so about the stops and shelters and the transport hubs. But there are a couple of schemes on the bus priority side, so those junction and bus lanes we call bus priority schemes. So a few updates for you. We previously talked very briefly about a proposal to put a bus lane on Portbury 100. We're no longer proposing to do that. We've been doing some work over the last year or so during the pause period, while we've been taking a bit of a step back from the implementation of these projects to look at some of the, to look at the justification, to look at the traffic data for these projects. And at Portbury 100, the modelling, the electronic modelling for the changes didn't really support that change. We saw, although it would help bus journeys, the impact to traffic using junction 19 we felt was too great. So we've recommended both to our members, but also to DfT, that we remove that scheme from our programme. On the other side of junction 19, we've also been looking at a scheme at Markham Road. Now, we had some really useful feedback from the local parish councils and from Portishead Town Council and local members as well, probably a year or a bit more ago now, actually, when we first spoke about that scheme. We've been quite busy behind the scenes looking at what we can do differently at Markham Road to address those concerns, and we're pretty near now having a revised proposal to bring back to the community to share. We think actually we found a way of making that scheme work both for buses but also for traffic, to try and improve the capacity for everybody there. So hopefully that's a good news story, but we're not quite ready to share it.
Sorry, Rob, you okay to take a question? Yeah, I mean, having spent quite a lot of time at the roundabout, I'd be very interested in what scheme you come up with. Is it possible we could meet and have a look through it? So I spent a lot of time looking at the traffic and the way it flows and stuff. And yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Up, isn't it? As soon as we've had those internal discussions, then yeah, absolutely, we'll arrange some meetings with our communities. Because we've lost the Portbury 100 scheme and the benefits that we'd hoped that would bring for buses, we've looked at what else we might do on the X4 corridor, particularly to try and find those journey time savings I talked about. And we're aware of there are locations in Portishead, but also in Pill, in fact, across all of our bus corridors, where just parking, the basic traffic management on our network could perhaps be reviewed to find to ease the problems that buses experience on the roads where they find parked cars in annoying places. So what we're proposing to do over the next year or so is look at those locations and propose essentially some parking restrictions or other basic measures like that, just to try and ease those pinch points and allow buses more easily through our network. And the final note on this slide is just really reflecting actually how many people in Portishead do use the buses. 27,000 people in a, is that a typical month or a particular month we
That's-
picked out?
Yeah, that's quite high for,
Mhm.
you know,
So-
for town, so it's well utilised.
Yeah, so 1,000 people a day are using the buses to, so that's boarding a bus
Yeah.
in Portishead, presumably to go somewhere else or travel within the town. We don't have figures for people who get off the buses, but we assume it's about the same. Okay, if you're happy to move on, next slide, please. So this map of North Somerset really shows why I can't sleep at night anymore. The capital programme is a very large programme of schemes across North Somerset. There's 17 or 18 of those large bus priority schemes, a few of which we've already delivered, the ones which are highlighted in green. But we've got several schemes we're still looking to deliver over the next year or so. I say year or so actually, just to pick up that point now, because we'd originally had a deadline of September 2025 from DfT for this programme. We've asked DfT to extend that to March 26. They had a meeting this afternoon to decide whether to grant that. We're kind of hopeful they will, but we haven't had a determination yet. So I keep saying year or year and a half. Let's hope it's a year and a half, because it eases the pressure across our network as we try and deliver so many projects. But also on this plan, we've got lots of traffic signal junction upgrades where we hope we can use modern technology to make those traffic signals work better, particularly for buses. And the transport hubs, which Emma will talk about in a second. What the plan doesn't show is the bus stop improvements. We're focusing, actually, Emma will also talk about this, so sorry for stealing your thunder, but we're also proposing about 150 to 180 basically new replaced bus stops with brand new shelters. So looking at the pavements, the curbing, the roads and road markings, as well as the shelters. So 150 to 180 completely new sites, which we hope will be really beneficial, much higher quality than the stops we already have. And then we're looking to also refresh the existing stops, so another several hundred stops being maintained, rebranded. And if we put all of those on my plan, there wouldn't be very much background left, which is why they're not shown. But just to make that point, there's a significant amount that isn't shown on that plan. So I think if we move on to the next slide, then I think over to you, Emma, to talk about. Oh, no, one more. I think for me, this is me. Yeah, I touched on it a second ago, but the capital improvements are intended to support the long-term sustainability of bus services. We're currently in a fortunate position that we have a significant revenue grant from DfT, which we're using to do lots of things, but part of that funding is used to support bus services. As I said, the 20-minute frequency we're seeing on the X4 currently, which is really great for passengers, and I think is we're seeing a good upturn in patronage because of those increased frequencies. That's partly enabled by the revenue funding from DfT. Now, in 18 months' time, we're going to lose that funding, and it's going to be very difficult for the council to continue any support for the commercial operators. So the purpose of the capital improvements is to anticipate that cliff edge by making those junction improvements, by providing those bus lanes which allow the buses to operate more quickly. If a bus takes less time to get between Portishead and Bristol, then it will come back sooner. And if we can keep those improvements, then essentially we can achieve the same frequency with fewer buses on the network, or we can do something else with those buses. We can work with commercial operators to find other opportunities. So those journey time savings are really, really, really key. Of course, on top of that, if we can improve punctuality, we can improve the passenger experience, then we hopefully will encourage more people to use the buses as well, which in turn improves the sustainability of the bus services as well. So this is all about trying to just get more people on the buses, make the buses operate more efficiently, so we'll still have really good services in a couple of years' time. So.
Sorry, I can't read that screen up there at all. I have sent this to Wendy as well, so if you want to reflect on it afterwards, please do. So as Rob said, we're looking at approximately 150.
Next slide, please.
Sorry, next slide, Wendy. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're looking at approximately 150 to 180 new shelters. But that kind of like is the scope we're looking at. Hopefully, it will be the optimized figure there. Within the capital funding that we've got as well, we're looking at 4 main transport hubs, and we'll go into what the hubs are in a moment. And this is based on patronage as well. So we're looking at Clevedon, Nelsey, Portishead, and just upgrading the Whirl interchange. We're also looking at 8 smaller hubs, and that's more in smaller villages. We're looking at Backwell, Cleve, Claverham, Congresbury, Long Ashton, Hill, an upgrade of the shelter at Western General Hospital, Well High Street and Yatton, and I'll talk about the first and last mile improvements and what they mean as well in a moment. Can you go on to the next slide, please, Wendy? Okay, so this is the bus stop programme. So we're focusing on the key corridors, which is the 6, 7, X1, X4 and X5. And all of these are getting the enhancements. So the new shelters, RTI, real-time information upgrades. And the stops have been prioritised into 5 batches. So it's A, B, C, D and E. And they're currently looking at rolling out batch A. So as Rob said, between 150 and 180 stops within this area. And it's a really tight programme, so that once the orders go in next week, we have to deliver 2 to 3 bus shelters per week in order to meet the end of our BSIP programme of hopefully March 2026. And so we're looking at, we have to look at the maintenance side of that and the rebranding of the bus shelters and the bus stops as well. And this is us working in liaison with the revenue team as well. Next slide, please, Wendy. So this just shows what we're looking at for upgrading. So so increased capacity at the shelters. This is where space allows. So we could potentially have up to a 6 bay. So when you look at the bus shelter, the back panel there is a bay. So we could go up to 6 bays if we've got the space that allows for that.
And I suppose I'm a patronage to justify it, isn't it? So
Yeah.
we're trying to kind of sorry, Emma, to interrupt, but yeah, we're sort of trying to target these where the patronage, existing patronage suggests that there's either a good opportunity to increase patronage further, or the existing patronage is already so high that the existing small shelters are just completely inadequate. So yeah, we'll have a range where
An example of that is Western General Hospital, where at the moment it's like a tiny little 2 bay rusty old shelter. It's got scaffolding bars in front of it. The real-time information isn't accurate, so we're aiming to optimize that and make it into a 6 bay, turn it 90 degrees, so that it just serves the purpose of getting more people on the buses that desperately need it from that hospital. So the RTI, which is the real-time information, you'll see the top screen there. It's called e-inks, so it works a bit like a Kindle, as it were. So you can put what information you want on there. There's also an audio at the bottom. We work heavily alongside disability access groups and North Somerset Vision to make sure we've got their input into that. The seats are going to be different. Currently, we've got really narrow tilted seats that don't have the elevated handles on there as well. So we're going to include those. And it's going to be, I can't remember what they call it, but it's like a reinforced plastic seating. So it's very durable and the maintenance should be better on that. We're also looking at living roofs that also absorbs CO2 and it's pretty self-sufficient. And also where it allows some solar panels, where it would be 1 solar panel on top of the bus shelter. And that would be able to serve the real-time information system on there. And also general tidying up where there's ponding. So quite a lot of bus shelters we've noticed through our audits have pools of water where it just floods. So it's just looking at that to make sure that people don't have to walk through pools of water to get to the bus stops. And also extending the bus cage, so the yellow lining on the roads where we can, and that kind of like that will prevent people being able to just park right in front of the bus so that they can't pull out. So it just allows them to pull in properly and pull out again. Next slide, please.
Hmm.
So when we say first and last mile, it's making sure that somebody can go from their doorstep to a bus shelter and catch the bus, and then their journey on to workplace or education, etc. So it's not making sure we've just got measures like cycle parking at bus shelters. It's making sure that there's connectivity there. So we find a lot of verges haven't been cut back, so people can't walk along the pavement safely with buggies or mobility scooters, etc. The state of some of the surfacing needs to be looked at as well. There's some areas that don't have dropped curbs so that people can access the pavements. Some areas may need a crossing, so it makes it safer. So this is all part of the first and last mile that we're looking at, but our budgets are really tight for that. So we're looking at priority ones at the moment, and then we'll probably have a list of 150 or something like that we'll then look at further funding that we can continue with it. What I would say as well is we can take some notes afterwards, but if you've got any thoughts around the area that you desperately think we need to look at, if you could let us know via Wendy, that would be amazing. Thank you. Okay, so the next slide. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So what is a transport hub? So it's an interchange facility, as I said, where people can have the options for their onward journeys. They can potentially use cycle parking, hoops, secure cycle parking if you've got expensive bikes, seating, planting, real-time information, parcel lockers, some greenery, trees, just to make an area a more pleasurable place to either dwell, sit and chat, or have things that are secure so that you can use bicycles, that you're able to walk somewhere to catch the bus. So we're looking at within all these areas, we're looking at high quality bus shelters. As I said, with the green roof, solar energy, real-time information. So cycle facilities, parcel lockers, seating, wayfinding is a really important one that some areas have picked up, that they don't have the signage for that. And the larger hubs, which includes Portishead, could include electrical vehicle charging or car clubs. So it's an opportunity for us to really enhance an area. And we are shortly appointing a design consultancy team to look at all four areas, so Portishead, Nailsea, Clevedon and Well, to come up with some ideas. And obviously it's working alongside yourselves initially and all the other stakeholders. So we want to, as I said, we want to engage with the key stakeholders before we even come up with conceptual designs on this. So it is with talking with you all right from the start and making sure we're all transparent all the way through the process. Okay, I don't know if you want to talk about this part, Rob, because this was you. So next slide, please, Wendy.
I think yes, just our, as Emma said, we really don't have any particular preconceptions about what this could look like in Portishead. We have an opportunity to really upgrade the bus stops right in the town centre. That's where we see the greatest patronage, isn't it?
Yeah, and Coombe Road.
Yeah, top end of the high street. So yeah, we absolutely want to work with the parish, the town council, and any other local stakeholders to develop these ideas. But I just wanted to remind everyone that we did do some work a couple of years ago, looking at what we might do on the high street in the future if a funding opportunity came along. This was the town council had approached us about road safety issues on both the High Street and on Bristol Road. We'd also been concerned about some road safety statistics. We'd seen a slightly unusual number of accidents on the High Street. So we thought it was a really good opportunity to work with the town council to just have a come up with some ideas for what we could do in the future. So we did that back in 2022. We had 3 workshops where we invited local stakeholders along to look at all of the issues along the high street, and then to try and identify some possible options that could be delivered in the future. The next couple of slides just show some snapshots from that work. First one is a extract from one of the boards we had at one of those meetings where people came along and put post-it notes and stickers on the drawings and annotated all of their concerns. I've just focused on the section at the top end of the high street because I think that's where we'd like probably to work with you about, but as I say, there's no fixed ideas. And the next slide then shows sort of the option that we ended up with. The concept, let's call it, that we ended up with the top end of the high street. There were lots of concerns about the speed of traffic, actually about how the bus stops worked in this area as well. But we wanted to really create a gateway for traffic turning off Wyndham Way into the high street. So there were some ideas here that we have in a drawer in the office that could be a starting point for further conversations. They don't have to be. I just wanted to sort of make that point, but we had done some work a couple of years ago.
And it involved the disability access group as well, where the crossing points are. It's quite confusing because some of it's signalised and other parts of it aren't.
Yeah, it was a really wide group of stakeholders, I think, who were involved in that piece of work. Local schools, local businesses, a really good number of people attended those sessions.
Okay, next slide, please, Wendy. So obviously this is not set in stone at all. This is just a quick feasibility study that I did of the area to see where there could be potential to put a transport hub. But this would be obviously subject to yourselves, the design consultants and all the key stakeholders. So this was an example of just looking at the precinct, which was near the Somerset Square, for an example. And it just shows the patronage. So the nearest bus stops on the precinct and Coombe Road show the patronage for May, June this year of 17,626 for that month. So it is quite high. And if we can do something, I mean, Portised's vibrant anyway. It's got lots of plant. It is really colourful in comparison with a lot of other towns, but it's just trying to enhance that to, as Rob and Hannah said, make sure that our bus services are sustainable after March 2026, because we won't have the funding to keep the services going otherwise. So the next slide. So this is subject to getting the consultants on board. So this is what we're looking at. We're aiming to get the agreed consultant to start looking at designs early September and then coming out to consultation with yourselves and key stakeholders September and early October. The first conceptual designs will go out late October, and then once they've been looked at, the following designs are the preliminary designs that go out end of December. And then a public consultation, which runs for 6 weeks, will go in early January 25. And then once that comes back, it feeds back in with all the options and feedback. We'll go with detailed designs and the construction. We're aiming for September 25, but then that's subject to whether we get the extension from DFT.
I think that's really key, isn't it? If we can get that extension, it means this obviously is quite a tight programme.
Really
but
tight.
add 6 months to the end of it, and it means we can be more flexible in terms of how long we have to engage to develop those proposals. So fingers crossed DFT say yes.
But we want to get it right as well, and obviously this is all ring-fenced money, so we can't use it on potholes, unfortunately, and other areas. It is specifically for these areas. So if we can't do that, then the money goes back to DFT and everybody loses out on it. So it is really an opportunity. We have this money to be able to use it for specific areas if we can do. And then the final slide is open to yourselves, and if you've got any questions, we do have some stakeholder groups, but I can liaise with Wendy as well if time is short tonight, just to get all the other stakeholders. And as I said, Wendy's got this presentation. If you can think about anything that you think, oh, I'd like to put my views across before anything happens at all, please can you liaise with Wendy, and Wendy can feed that through to me. She's got my email address hopefully now. So thank you for your time, and if you've got any questions you'd like to ask us or Hannah now, please do so. Hannah's been too quiet.
Thank you very much for that. Are you happy to take questions from the public in the room? Yes. So I think Paul wanted to say something. Bob wanted to say something as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's really exciting. Yeah, so good stuff. Thank you. I guess I had a couple of questions in terms of the scope, because obviously with the X4, one of the main issues why it takes so long is because it stops 44 times or 52 times, depending which direction you're going in and where you live. You know. But obviously you're beholden to our friends at First Bus. I mean, is there any scope of, stop, so part of the reason it takes so long is it goes through Pill and it goes through, around Sheepway, whereas people really want to get into work in the morning as quickly as possible. So is that part of it, or is that just not on the agenda at the moment? Mm.
Yeah, we have a legally binding agreement with First, who will work with us on BSIP to deliver the benefits. So we can absolutely have those conversations with them if there are particular locations that you think are causing issues. I think at the moment the reality is that to make the X4 commercially viable, it has to go through Pill because that's where it picks up a good number of passengers. But I'm kind of guessing that point. I don't really know how the service operates.
Sorry, go on.
I know that's not, it might be a guess on your part, but it's true because we've had that query before. It has been looked at a couple of times so far with the current pattern of usage on that service. If it didn't go through Pill at this time, it would not be on a trajectory to be commercially sustainable. In a future world, and we've gone through a process over the course of this last 6 to 9 months around what comes after BSIP, and obviously that may well change given that we've got a new government. The engagement that we had with parishes and what the team have been looking at internally is, ideally we'd want to see in the future a network where we had, round town services and more express routes between communities. We're not there yet. We're still trying to get to a point where we've got a sustainable commercial network, or potentially that's, that might well change if control of buses change. But I think that, we understand some of the issues about these long routes, and it can be off-putting for certain passengers. They're really critical to certain others, and constantly looking at that balance is something that's a challenge. But please keep challenging us on it, because the position is always changing.
Yeah, obviously I'm part of a bus group in Portishead, and we've communicated with you quite a few times before. You talk about rebranding. Obviously, some of the bus stops and some of those bus stops will be new. I really like to see that you take control of advertising. It's a really good point, because obviously if you're advertising for the local businesses within the community, then that revenue can be put back in to keep those buses going, rather than handing it out to obviously McDonald's, which is in the high street, which you then only get a tiny bit of that revenue, which you're obviously losing out. And obviously if you are rebranding and putting in new bus stops, that will be a great opportunity to actually probably expand that and look after the other bus stops that are adjacent to the new ones and the rebranded ones. And the other point is that with the bus posters that are currently in the bus stops, there's no advertising for where those buses go. So a picture of, if it goes to Weston and you've got the bus timetables for Weston, put a picture of Weston, put a picture of Bristol, put a picture of Portishead, because then it encourages people. Because at the moment, so like to give you an example, some of the X10 posters, because it's just the X10, it's literally a dirty great big white sheet with just the X10 timetable at the bottom, and it just seems to me a waste of energy, where you can advertise where those buses go and promote those towns. Okay, thanks.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying the electronic displays we're talking about, we're calling e-inks, but essentially a very large Kindle, which will be in the bus shelters, will give us opportunities to increase the amount of information that's available, and we could potentially look at those kind of things. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, Janet, and then Chris. we are spending quite a bit of time on this initial part of the agenda. There's quite a lot here. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak after Chris? Just Emma, Sue, and Annette. Yep. So in that order, after Janet and then Chris.
Is there any point in considering one bus an hour going from Portishead straight to Bristol? Because I think that you'd increase the number of people going on that bus.
I think everyone hopefully is now aware that between the service change dates, which are always September and April now, that we are looking constantly at how can we improve the services that we've got to keep building patronage. I know that's a bit frustrating for some people who say you're constantly changing the timetables with First, but we're trying to rebuild the network. So we'll always take suggestions over this period, September to April, because we've done quite a lot of work before on the X4 and quite a lot in Western. We're particularly going to focus on the areas which are covered by the X6, 7, 8 and 9, which go through from sort of Clevedon, Nailsea, Long Ashton area into Bristol. So it's unlikely that we would be looking at that between now and April, but I'm really very happy to take it back to the team, and we'll keep monitoring what's happening with the X4 and see what potential there is in future on that. And obviously I'm always happy. We've come back a number of occasions to talk to the groups who want to with the town council's group. So certainly it's something that we can explore.
You mentioned the X4 is every 20 minutes, which is great, but you then went on to say for a period of time while the funding lasts or something. So is there a restriction as to how long that funding is guaranteed?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Do you want me?
Oh dear, sorry about.
So yeah, the funding was originally just until March 2025. We then managed to get it extended to March 2026, but that is the end of our current bus service improvement grant. It's not 3 months' time. No. So that we do have a fair degree of certainty on that, but it's the figures are modelled. So what we do with that bit of the revenue funding is there's an anticipation that bus use will go up over that time. So we've got a plan to give less to the bus company as they get more commercial income, and all of the work that we're doing is designed to help to encourage people and remove some of the barriers to people using the bus. So we're constantly monitoring that because it's not necessarily a purely fixed amount. We'll be doing that right through until March 2026. And the aim of that plan is that by March 2026, the bus companies should be able to run those services commercially without us having to provide that subsidy, because they'll have got to the point where they're viable, they're viable purely from the passenger fares.
Okay. Sorry, one minor point. I think the use of buses in Portishead is greater than you realise, because the park and ride are very popular, and that's obviously not being reflected in your figures. I don't know how you manage that. I have no idea.
That's interesting. I mean, we work very closely with WECA. So you're right, it won't necessarily be in the figures that we've been talking about today, but it's a really interesting point, and we'll take it back and have a look at that.
So I think then Emma, then Annette. Yep.
Just a quick one. The town council own a lot of the bus stops here and the bus shelters. So what happens to them?
I meant to make that point actually, but we're aware of that. We need to talk to you ASAP, or talk to the town council indeed, about what we do with those council-owned stops. There's an opportunity for us to invest in those shelters with you. Equally, we're not wedded to a particular route. We can work with you. Well, we'd very much like to work with you, and we'll be having that conversation shortly.
And what happens if the bus shelter that is owned by the town council is not big enough. Because there's so many people wanting to get on the bus at that stop. Would you then consider, and I leave it up to you, I'm just making a suggestion that perhaps the town council would be able to swap a bus shelter around so that they are still being used, because of course they all are in very good condition.
Absolutely, that would be, that's certainly an option we'd want to have a look at.
I was going to say, we can recycle bus shelters if they're really good, but we have to look underground as well to make sure that what's underneath hasn't rusted completely, but we have been looking at that.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you.
It was only one clarification really, I guess, on the recommendations that were on the slide for the Portbury 100 and for Markham Road. Are they within your control to actually completely take them off of the potential BSIP plan? Or does that recommendation of yours go back to DFT and they have to make the decision?
Apologies, everybody. I seem to be being completely inept to the microphone. In terms of Portbury 100, we've already had that conversation with DFT, and they've said they're happy for us to remove Portbury 100 from the programme. We've also had a conversation with them about changing what the Markham Road scheme looks like, and as I say, we're looking to share those plans with you as soon as we can. But yeah, we need to seek DFT authority if we change the programme.
Just on the last thing, the X10 you mentioned, but yeah, my daughter has started in one of the Filton, or in the Wise campus, and although she can get in on the bus 4 days of the week, she has to get the train home 3 times a week just because it isn't going in late. So I think there's probably quite a lot of feedback that we would be able to get from certainly new starters, really, I guess, that we will be able to collate and feedback into Wendy for sure.
Thanks. Could I just thanks. I was just going to say that light shining right in my eye, Paul. So if you could turn it off, but that's great. And that, please come on up. Sorry, we haven't got the roving mic tonight. I don't think anyone could find it.
Yes, hello. A few questions. The first is, has what you've done so far been approved by the Executive Committee of North Somerset Council? That's the first question. So I'll leave you to answer at the end. The second thing is a very expensive project that you're considering, and I'm too concerned about the subsidy. If you replace all those bus stops and everything else that you've mentioned, obviously some of it's still at early stages, is that funding that you're getting earmarked? I know you said it's earmarked, but is it to fund everything, or are there going to be additional costs to the taxpayer? But before you answer, there were some other issues. You mentioned Somerset Hall and the precinct for your possible hub. The Somerset Hall precinct is a really congested and busy area. And also it's a place where people meet, that I'm not sure that the hub that you described on your screen is going to be viable in that particular space, because people use it as a meeting place. There's cafes and bars nearby. So that concerns me. And you also mentioned the weeds and things by bus stops. You'd have to have some work done. It was North Somerset Council that caused those weeds because of their ridiculous rewilding and not clearing our streets and bus stops of weeds and plants. So you're actually, you need to get that sorted out first. And, you're actually putting in something that was caused by North Somerset Council in the first place, which residents aren't very happy about. So I am concerned about the finance, because although you say it's all earmarked, what we don't want is another rewilding with just because there's money available that you have to spend it. You don't want to damage a town and create all these new bus stops that may not last in the the sort of scheme that you've got because there's no subsidy at the end of your funding. And First Bus aren't really on board with funding because they've also said in the past that a lot of our routes aren't viable. But you seem very assured that they are going to say they are viable. And so that probably will concern a lot of residents because we've had lots of problems with First Bus. So that's
Lots and lots of questions in there. I appreciate we may not have time to go into detail of all of those things. In terms of have the executive approved the plans, in broad terms, the executive have approved the bus service improvement programme. There are a series of different decision-making points which do go back to executive as that gets more defined. So each of the individual schemes, for example, once the work has been done to talk to people, to work up the plans, comes back to me as the executive member and to our BSIP board. In terms of the bus stops programme and the transport hubs programme, we haven't yet gone out for a design consultant. That's one of the reasons we're coming out to talk to people today, because we want to understand people's views before we actually contract and commit money to it. But in broad terms, the executive and the BSIP board, which includes as members myself, the council leader Mike Bell and deputy leader Catherine Gibbons, have said we do want the hubs and bus stops programme to go ahead. We've been working jointly with the West of England Combined Authority on that because, of course, people are travelling from our area into others. And so the branding process is one to have a consistent experience across the region. What that doesn't mean is that every single shelter has to be done, or that what you've heard today is proposals around these are locations we'd like to look at. If you tell me you don't want us to spend the money in Portishead, of course, I'll take that back and say, well, actually, maybe Portishead don't want to have these things done. We don't have to force them on you. And in terms of First Bus, I meet on a quarterly basis with Rob Pym, who is the commercial director of First Bus. We have it has been a bit rocky, I would say, in the past as to what information they've provided to us around the monitoring of performance of the service. It's improving. I get better information about it, and we see the figures are getting to a point where they are certainly more commercially viable than they were. Will that be the case in 2 years' time? I don't have a crystal ball, but we monitor it quarter by quarter, and we will be looking and planning to see what happens as a result. And of course, we've also been developing relationships with other operators where we can. Sometimes that's successful, sometimes it's not. I'm really pleased the Big Lemon have taken on the X10. Obviously, Transpora had difficulties with it. So I appreciate that we've come from difficult times, haven't we? And it's my role to try and make sure.
Thank you. But what we don't want in Portishead is to find that when it goes out to public consultation, as we've found so many times in the past, it's too late because all decisions to be made. We've had that so many times in the past. You need to ask the public now before it gets to that final stage where you've got your plans and then you're going to reply to consultation, because our experience is nothing happens then.
And I think one of the reasons that we've paused in the programme and tried to look at how have we done this before. We want to do things differently. I've come here a number of different times to talk to the public about bus services. I've come to talk to the group and listen, perhaps more importantly, listen to the group that Bob is part of. Totally fine. I'm not suggesting for a minute. I know all of the individuals involved, but the point is, I think we're trying to listen at an earlier stage so that we can get things right and spend money in the right places. And I think the ask today was about who are the stakeholders that we need to talk to now in Portishead? Who are the groups that might have early views on this? We really want to have those conversations so that when we do go out to consultation more generally with all of the public, you know, you can't do that without something to consult on, but we want to talk to people about what they'd like to have. So that's the aim of being here. I appreciate that's not always what's been done in the past. And so I understand your comments, and I've heard them from elsewhere. That's the change we're trying to make as an executive of North Somerset across the board, but also particularly in terms of highways and transport.
Can I just mention something as well on when we're We're looking at the conceptual designs and the preliminary designs. We do aim to come to Portishead so that the local residents can come in, look at plans, give your opinions. When we go to public consultation, that's open to all. So anyone in North Somerset can state what, you know, whatever their feedback is. So we do come to the local area first. So you get the opportunities to get involved in it from the start. When it goes to public consultation, hopefully pretty much everybody locally has already had some input. That's what we're aiming to do anyway.
Thank you very much for coming along tonight. Are you, sorry, just bear with me a second. Are you able to hang about in the room and speak to anybody who wants to? Because we've had nearly 50 minutes now and we're not even into the council agenda. So if you'd be happy to take any further questions in the room, that would be great, because these lovely people from the Lions have been waiting ages to have their say as well. But thank you very much for coming along and sharing that. I think it's just Laura at the back, yeah?
Thank you. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thanks, Roger, and thank you for inviting us along. I'm not sure how I quite follow that, but we're going to keep it short and sweet, Roger. It's important what we want to say tonight. I'm Adrian Workman, and I'm from the Portishead Lions, and this is Linda Danning, who's also from the Portishead Lions. And next slide, please. And another one, please. And tonight we're going to cover who are the Portishead Lions, if you've not heard about us before, how we serve in the community, and how you can help us, very importantly, support our local community. And if you see these fine 6 specimens along the high street anytime, please grab them. They're the directors of Portishead Lions, and they're more than keen to get feedback on what else we can do to help serve in the community. Next slide, please. Okay, starter for 10. Who are the Portishead Lions? I'm sure some of you will be aware. I know Bob over there is a great advocate of the Lions. Started back as our charter in 1970. That's 54 years is when we started. And believe it or not, we have a member who's still an active member of the club, 54 years working in the community for the residents of Portishead, which is an amazing achievement. We are a club, and we are a club of 15 members now, and that is a challenge for us, and something we really are trying to encourage other members to join us. There was a time when we had over 30 members and a waiting list, and I know voluntary groups in Portishead have a similar challenge. So what is our aim? Our aim is to serve in the community, and we do that by raising money through a range of activities: car boot sales, the popular Santa and Easter floats, book sales, raffles. We even had some chap do a wing walk. Anything really goes, basically. Members come along and they want to have an idea about raising money, and we're more than keen to take forward, because the generosity of Portishead residents, you know, has no bounds. What do we do with those funds? Well, we donate them back into the community. 100% of what we get in, we put back out. We don't take any admin fees or anything like that. So that's going back into the community and wider projects. But it's also not just about money, you'll be pleased to hear. It's about expertise and physical resource. So who knows and has dealt with Kim, the manager at the Portishead Youth and Community Centre. Amazing lady and manager, doing a great job down there. We as Lions support her. We do cutting the grass, painting the railings, marshalling, DIY, you name it, we do it. And my phone lights up quite often every day from Kim saying, can we help with something? And that's a very good example of how we're helping in the community. Next slide, please. Okay, there are 3 things that we are really quite proud of and we want to sort of shout about. Our DFIB network is one of those. I hope you've all seen the DFIBs and the green boxes on the walls around. We have 33 DFIBs in the Lions network, from all the way from Abbotsleigh to Weston and Gordano. They started about 2013. One of our Lions had a bit of an emergency. There wasn't a readily available DFIB. And from there, we've gone on to 33 DFIBs. This is important stuff because it actually saves lives. If you want some stats, basically we have what we call a call out, which is where the DFib has been activated by a 99 call, and we have about 5 or 6 a month, 1 a week of our 33 get called out. That's quite, quite high. We have some very popular ones, if that's the right word. I'm not sure if it is the right word, but Boots the Chemist, I know it's not Boots the Chemist, but that on High Street is popular. But also we have quite a few DFibs next to our local pubs. The Hall and Woodhouse one is very popular for some strange reason. And also the Windmill and other pubs and the Ship and what have you. Of those call outs, we then have activations, and that's where the DFib is actually physically used. Those are roughly running at about one a month or so. And from the feedback that we've got, which is not in all cases, but we've certainly saved about 10 lives in the last 3 years, and that's where the actual DFib has been physically used, i.e. the shock treatment, the CPR and what have you. So I think that's, a great endorsement of the Lions and the community and how that's come together. But it takes resource. Every month our Lions volunteers have to go out and check the DFibs, clean them, check they're ready 24/7 for emergency use. There's also a cost involved, and this will be surprise a few people. £3,700 it costs for a DFib and a cabinet. But once they're in place, then they get activated and used. That's £150. Single use batteries and pads, 150 quid every time. It's £150 also to replace the batteries every 4 years. And also we've got 33 DFibs, which are now coming slowly to the end of their lives. They're at warranty lives, that's 10 to 12 years. So we've had to do an accrual now, and we have to put aside £5,000 of our donations to keep this network going every year. There's a good £50,000 worth of DFibs out there needing support. Next slide, please. Okay, well-being. I'm sure all of you and the Town Council will be aware of the Spring into Wellbeing event successfully run in March. I think, Roger, you were there and said it was the best thing, not since sliced bread, but it was amazing what we could do in North Somerset. There was no other town in North Somerset running an event such as this. 900 residents attended those venues. We, as in Lions, worked with the Town Council and also your wellbeing representation, and we ran some blood tests, 7 different types of blood tests. We widened it from the PSA tests of the past. That's 322 tests were carried out, everything from prostate through to thyroid, diabetes, cholesterol, and that really gave, I think, the public the peace of mind of being able to get a blood test and within 72 hours get a result back and take that then to their doctor if they have any concerns. We recognise there are a few people who have other views around PSA testing, but we work with the Prostate Support Association of Somerset, the SPSA, and also Prostate UK. And at the moment, the PSA blood test is what they identify as the best way of identifying what is the biggest killer of men in terms of cancer in cancer views at the moment. And our evidence shows that 5% of the men tested in each of our 3 years we've been doing this have needed further intervention. That's 46 men, local residents to Portishead, who have been helped, had some form of intervention. And last event in March, we had people coming up and saying, thank you. My loved one or relative came last year and was identified, had some checks, was found to have prostate cancer, had no symptoms, and they're here and have had successful treatment. That is an endorsement of the wellbeing, and I think and also an endorsement of the Town Council of supporting. £7,000 is what it costs for that free blood test that we gave out, and we did that through our own funds, the Prostate Support Association, and also a grant from the Town Council. Very much appreciated. 50 wellbeing groups were also there for the day, giving both physical and mental health support. So it's certainly something that we want to do again. Next slide, please. Right, this is very exciting. I get very excited about this because this is the 1st of September. Raise the energy levels, everybody. This is a youth grant 2024. So Lions, we really recognise that some young people are out there, young adults, they need some more support. They may have, slightly strayed from the straight and narrow, as it were. So we've launched Youth Grant. It aims to give achieve aspirations and give a little bit of extra support for their journey. We've got previously some experience of groups coming to us where we've helped people with football kits or the club membership of a group because they've, again, enjoyed playing football. They've gone a bit wayward, if that's the right word, and now they've come back and they've had focus. So what we want to do is provide a grant out there. It's launched on the 1st of September. There's a QR code. Go to our website, find out more. We're asking people or organizations to come forward and apply for some grant funding. It may be money, it may be support, it may be help. But our young people are our future, and the Lions really recognise that, and we want to give every bit of help we can. Next slide, please. Okay, so we all like activities. Who doesn't like a car boot sale? We love them. I know Bob's always there. My wife fills her car up. She takes stuff down and brings more back. But we've got our last one on the 22nd of September down at the show field. Great fundraising opportunity for the Lions and also for the community to get together. Here's an important one. Ukraine Humanitarian Aid Collection on the 12th of October will be at Sainsbury's. We ran one in 2023. And it was a great success. This is a direct line. This is where the Lions and the international Lions element comes in, because we were able to send white vans of items donated by Portishead residents all the way through Poland, the Lions in Poland, straight through to the Ukraine Lions. And that got aid straight through, not being diverted or being misplaced. It was items that were requested by the Ukrainian public, and the items that we collected via Sainsbury's and other collection areas, and that has huge cut through. The thank yous that we got from the Ukrainian people were, heartwarming. It was an immense achievement, and we hope to have another successful run on the 12th of October. And lastly, but not least, I can't not mention the Santa Carol Float, which starts on the 30th of November. Hey, does Portishead or any other town do Christmas better than Portishead? I don't think so. We have the lights, we have Santa, we've booked him, he's coming. 30th of November, it starts. Everyone loves the Carol Float. We have families, grandparents, parents bring their kids back. They even hassle us to understand the rota and the route in advance so they can get out and see the Carol Float. So, again, a very important month for the Lions, because all those funds are what we are able to do in the following year in terms of support. Final slide, I'm sure you'll be glad. It's how can you help us? The few topics of tonight, it's all about improving awareness of Lions. I think Bob mentioned in the past that, we don't shout enough about what we do. We're now shouting because it's important. We do a lot of great things. We've been a bit modest in the past. So let's get the awareness up of Lions, because what we do need is gaining more members. 15, we'd love some more. We had a couple more ladies coming along on our Monday club meeting, which was great, but we'd like to see more. We know there's a challenge for all voluntary groups in Portishead to get members, but it's a great atmosphere, a fun place, and we actually do stuff, which sometimes it's hard. And as councillors, you probably find this is where you can actually make a difference. And where you also can make a difference is also sponsorship and funding. We know money is tight at the moment, but if we want to make a bigger and better wellbeing event for 2025, let's work together and let's get the funding together and make it happen. And that's us from Portishead Lions. So thank you for your time. I should have said there's some leaflets. If you want an awareness leaflet for DFIBs, you can put it in your cupboards. There's some on the back and also some voluntary groups there.
Thank you very much for coming along and speaking to us tonight. It's always great to outline the really good work that you do in the community. I know none of us want to use any of those DFIBs, but I think we're all very happy that they're there just in case. And I know the well-being testing that you've been doing, that's absolutely fantastic. A number of friends of mine have had prostate cancer. They were lucky enough to be diagnosed early. It's really important that people take these tests. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll let you get back to your agenda now.
So moving swiftly on. Welcome to the meeting. That was the pre-meeting. This is the meeting. It's yeah, time's marching, isn't it? So let's get through as quickly as we can. Fire safety, we are not expecting, I probably have said this earlier, shouldn't I? We are not expecting any fire drills. So if the fire alarm goes off, please look around. You'll see fire exit signs. We will congregate over the road in the car park until we get the all clear to come back in. Hopefully we won't have to worry about that. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have apologies for absence from councillors Bob Cartwright, Martin Dowling and Mike Johnston.
Okay, and do we have to propose and second and vote on that? So shall I propose, do we have a seconder to accept the apologies, and all in favour? Thank you very much. Declaration of councillors' interests. I have none that I'm aware of.
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 By having the police crime commissioner attend and have an interview with us to explain the poor performance of the local constabulary in relation to the crime and disorder we're having in Portishead. I've been beating my head against a brick wall to try and get things sorted out. So I'd like to speak to Claire Moody with my colleagues. If that fails, my next step will be to speak to Sarah Cruz, the Chief Constable. So I'm asking for a vote to contact Miss Moody to get her to come to the folk hall.
Okay, I'm not sure that's a declaration of interest. Are you declaring that you have an interest in?
As the police liaison councillor, I have, because it's part of my remit to try and sort out the problems we got in the town. And I've really come to a real stop at the moment. So I've really got a vested interest as a resident of the town and as a councillor.
Okay, that's in the item further on the agenda. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for making that clear.
No declarations of interest.
That I'm aware of, Roger.
And none here either. Nothing that I'm aware of.
Nothing I'm aware of, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are now on item 4 on the agenda, Portishead Town Council behaviour policy. From time to time, the council reviews its policies to see if there's room for improvement. When Portishead Town Council first set up its behaviour policy, it was one of the first to do so. Since then, many other councils have followed suit. We have therefore reviewed our policy and those of other councils to see what improvements could be made. The intention was to ensure that the policy is fair, transparent and accountable. We are therefore here to consider amendments to the behaviour policy. The amended behaviour policy is attached to the agenda. If the behaviour policy is approved and adopted, to form the Portishead Town Council Behaviour Policy Committee, consisting of 3 town councillors, the town clerk, and 1 ad hoc independent member appointed by the town clerk. The recommendation is therefore to approve amendments to the behaviour policy and to form the Portishead Town Council Behaviour Committee, consisting of 3 town councillors, the town clerk, and 1 ad hoc independent member appointed by the town clerk. Do I have a proposer for this?
I'll propose it.
Paul Gardner, thank you. And a seconder? Tim? And would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, just to add to what you said, Roger, obviously the ethos of the town council is to act as a facilitator for the whole community, to help residents and community groups achieve even more than they do already. We've seen some great group today in Portishead Lions. So that's what we're about. So we always aim to be inclusive of all people, which means encouraging different views and perspectives. But we can only do that if residents and council officers and councillors and their friends and families all feel comfortable and safe in any way that they contribute to the council discussions and community discussions in whatever setting that might be, whether that be meetings or social media or whatever. So as Roger said, policy's been rewritten to improve it, to try and achieve the balance between enabling free speech for everybody, whilst dealing with unacceptable behaviour that could potentially threaten the ability of some people to contribute. I think the main features are, which is kind of Roger's already highlighted, we've got a behaviour policy committee consisting of the 3 councillors, as he said, plus the clerk and an independent person appointed by the clerk. And they would only be called if there is a suspected case of unacceptable behaviour. I stress suspected because the whole point of the committee is it reviews evidence properly and in a balanced way. This, the second major change, I guess, is that there's a requirement that 2 councillors will need to formally request to the clerk that a meeting of the Behaviour Policy Committee is convened to review a suspected case of unacceptable behaviour. So we try to put in some checks and balances. That's what it's there for. Obviously, we hope never to have to actually apply the policy, but it's there as a backstop because we have a duty to all of our residents, staff and councillors to provide a safe environment, as I said. So that's the policy. I would also add we, as councillors, we're also undertaking some training on how to handle and de-escalate confrontation, which is another action we're taking to try and minimise the need for a behaviour policy. So that's another thing to add. Okay, so I think that's a summary of where we are. So over back to you, Roger.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for this, against this, or to debate it, or to raise an amendment? No, in which case I will move directly on to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, that's passed then. Moving on to number 5, we
Sorry,
have...
Roger, are you going to appoint the
Oh God, I even wrote it in my notes and forgot to read it. So yes, that being passed, we have to appoint 3 people to the committee. So do I have 3 volunteers? That's Miriam, Paul, and Alan. Yep. Do we have to do those separately, or can we take them? So we take them as a whole. So I'm happy to propose those. Will anybody second? And all those in favour, please raise your hands. And that looks to be passed as well. Thank you, Paul, for acting as my external memory. Okay, so next one is the chairman's report. That's me. I will be as brief as possible. I have attended no official events as chairman since our last meeting, so there's nothing to report there. There's a few things that I'd just like to touch on as we go through. Hopefully they're things that are of interest to the members of the public and people here. The first one being the toilets. The public toilets at Iceland Car Park, operated by Portishead Town Council, have yet again been the subject of vandalism. It's unfortunate that some members of our society see so little value in these facilities that they are happy to vandalise them, which often takes them out of use for a number of weeks at a time, not to mention the cost of fixing the damaged cause. In 2022-23, the income was £1,198 from the toilets. The costs were £11,071. In 23-24, the income was £480 and the costs were £10,583. And between April and July this year, the income was £76 and the costs were £2,942. This means that this one toilet block is costing Portishead Town Council about £10,000 a year to operate. Although there's a CCTV camera in the car park that can see people entering and leaving the toilets, it's not appropriate to place a camera inside the toilets. Therefore, CCTV cannot identify the person or people causing this damage. And moving on, CCTV. Portishead Town Council has a number of CCTV cameras operating around the town. These are monitored by North Somerset Council and provide an effective deterrent against crimes and antisocial behaviour. They are an invaluable resource for the town and allow for the quick identification of serious incidents and the speedy deployment of police if warranted. CCTV is not a replacement for police officers on the beat. And of course, CCTV has its shortcomings. It does not always catch incidents that happen. It cannot see through face coverings or hoodies, and it cannot stop all incidents. CCTV is one tool in the armoury against crime. It is not and was never intended to be a replacement for a regular police presence in our town. Moving on, Portishead Library. Portishead Town Council do not operate any libraries. They are all operated by North Somerset Council. It's in the public domain that up to 200 libraries across England are under threat of closure. I'm pleased to say that Portishead Library is not on that list. But these are uncertain times. With local government funding being stretched to breaking point, it's clear that hard decisions will need to be made in the future. Portishead Town Council fully supports our library, and should it ever come under threat, we would seek to secure its future for Portishead. And with all of that said, we now move on to public participation. I'll put my glasses on so I can see. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there we go. So should we start with you, Anne? You've got an entire desk to yourself now with your own microphone. No more kneeling on the floor. Sorry about that, Sue.
So when the red light is on, I'm on. Okay. My name is Anne Townsend and I give permission for my name to be entered into the minutes. Okay, Wendy? My speech is timed, so I would be grateful if I could be allowed to conclude it before there's any questions. Is that okay? Thank you.
So certainly, you say it's timed. How long is it?
Oh, I knew you'd ask that. 4 minutes.
Lovely, thank you.
I think there's enough time for 30 minutes. Thank you. Okay, the phrase know your audience, also referred to as your target audience, refers to the importance of understanding the characteristics, needs, expectations, etc. of the people you are communicating with. It's a fundamental principle in every field where precise and successful communication is needed. Having listened to a number of speeches over the years, I feel as though I have become accustomed to knowing who the speechwriter's target audience should be. I'd like to share some examples of where I believe that the Portishead Independents are talking to a target audience other than the 27,000 residents of Portishead. In April 2024, 2 Portishead councillors were voted in as chair and vice chairs of Portishead Town Council by their peers to replace Ben and Paul, who had resigned. Unfortunately, the resignations took place against the backdrop of allegations of bullying. The 2 outgoing councillors were popular and extremely competent. I believe that the decision makers' audience were a tiny proportion of Portishead's population. They were not speaking for me. It is my belief they weren't speaking for a significant proportion of the Portishead population. May 2024, the Pram meeting. Custom and practice over many years, including a democratic vote, has decreed that this meeting is designed for the Portishead residents to attend and speak without council interference. This year, it was cancelled at the behest of Roger Whitfield, chair of Portishead Town Council. I was in attendance at the meeting and wished to speak. To all intents and purposes, the residents were prevented from free speech by the PI group that regaled us all of its accomplishments over the past year. Unfortunately, I and many others felt the atmosphere of past Pram had been destroyed by the chair imposing his own agenda and effectively killing off public participation and hence local democracy. June 2024, an elderly resident with health issues tried to speak in the public participation section, as is his right. The current chair and vice chair tried to stop him speaking. He was approached by both men in what appeared to be a threatening manner. The evidence was recorded on video and has attracted in excess of 1,500 views on the YouTube channel. This is unprecedented for our town. To whom were the vice chair and chair communicating when they took this action? They weren't speaking for me. July 2024, at the extraordinary meeting, ex-Vice Chair Paul Churchill spoke and confirmed that the events of June 2024 did amount to a breach of Portishead Town Council Code of Conduct. Mr. Churchill was speaking to me and for me. First the Pram meeting and now public participation. For at least 10 years, public participation was very prominently at the front of the agenda. Tonight is at item 6. When the decision was taken to change this, I believe it was done without common consent. The decision makers weren't speaking to me, neither were they speaking for me, and certainly not for the majority of our 27,000 residents. More recently, and against the North Somerset Council drive for cutbacks, the current chair has been discussing library closures and the introduction of parking charges. This has been taking place on his Facebook page, Possetcast. Surely this discussion should be open to the wider Portishead community and not a limited group. Why someone should wish to discuss something so important in a self-regulated group is anyone's guess. I've repeatedly asked who our chair represents. It is possible North Somerset Council, especially with the Wyndham Way development. I don't believe it is the Portishead residents. In view of the above, I must ask our chair to reconsider his target audience. And if he doesn't think that this is the majority of Portishead residents, he should stand aside and let someone else do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the free plug for my website. That's great. Other Facebook pages and websites are available for you to discuss whatever you want. Yeah, and surprisingly enough, they're all moderated, and they all have memberships, including Annette. Who's sorry? Who's? I think I'm sorry, Annette, but unless you're going to speak on microphone, no one. It's not recorded. So who's next? Annette, I believe you put your hand up. Would you like to go next? Chris.
Okay. Firstly, I'm going to just nitpick a little, if I may. Is his microphone actually on? Yeah. Only that I'm a bit of an anorak, so I'm going to start with a light-hearted thing just to try and lift the mood a little. And that my point 3, on your behaviour policy, there is mention that all members of PT's Portishead Town Council are bound by Policy Code 2, Code of Conduct for Members. It's not mentioned anywhere else. I don't know what Policy Code 2, where it consists. So the only one I could find was on the members of House of Commons. They have a behaviour policy which has Policy Code 2. I couldn't find it on the website for North Somerset Council, nor the Portishead Town Council, and yet you guys have just voted for it. And so obviously I assume you know what it is because you've confirmed you're happy to abide by it.
Yeah, we definitely know what it is. There may be a typo, but last time I looked, it was on the town council site. But I will have a closer look, and if it's not, yeah, if it's not, it will definitely be there, and I'm happy to send you a copy as well. Okay.
Sorry, can
I
can
was
can I just point out, I think that when one of these microphones is going on, it's turning the other one off. So just keep an eye on that when you push a button. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to go into my more serious point, and I'm going to read this one because quite a bit of what I've written here isn't what I say. And let me go on. The parish meeting took place this year on 8th of May 2024. And though the chairperson publicly expressed sentiment that it was successful, it cannot have escaped his and other councillors' notice that this view was not shared by many residents of the town. Heather Toms, a community-minded resident, has taken it upon herself to stage a further meeting and invite everyone, all residents, to attend. Whilst it's not intended to fulfil the legal requirements of the legislation, it will fulfil the spirit of the law in giving the public access to a platform from which they can voice their thoughts on local matters. Heather Toms is on holiday and so is unable to be present, but she has asked me to emphasise on her behalf that she is not trying to make any sort of political point by staging the event, and her intentions are entirely honourable. She wants me to make that clear. Her exact words were, "It will not be allowed to get personal or obstructive. People will be allowed to ask the relevant councillors, those who attend, about issues such as," and she mentioned the library, the nature reserve, parking charges, and any other issues that they need information on. All I want, again, remember this is Heather, is constructive, informative, and a civil meeting, as anything else will be a waste of everyone's time. So that was the end of her quote, and I'll just continue briefly. Now, I know that the town clerk may have or already invited the councillors to attend in a private capacity, and Heather has, I believe, spoken to Councillor Gardner on this matter. But my question to the council is, number one, will the town council support the gesture and promote the event and allow her notices to be displayed around the town and on the council website? That's the first question. And the second question, are the councillors going to commit to attending? Whilst Heather is trying to glean information as to what topics are going to be raised, the very nature of the meeting is to allow people to turn up on the evening and raise whatever is on their mind. So the more councillors who attend, the better and more effective the meeting will be. Now, on a personal thing, all I have to say is that this is a big gesture she's making to heal the wounds within this town. And if you pretend they don't exist, that's fine, but we all know they do. So there needs to be a peacemaker in this town, and Heather is setting herself up. So I would ask you all to seriously consider coming along, letting her choose who chairs it, rather than imposing it on them. And let's all try and have a meeting that is for the benefit of Portishead and not for any particular individual or party. So if I could just reiterate my question, if the town council would firstly support Heather's gesture, I'd be grateful. Would you mind having a show of hands on it?
I just to say the parish meeting, which is what it is, or parish residents meeting, isn't it, is actually enshrined in the Local Government Act. So it takes the chair of the council, 2 councillors or 6 residents to call it. It is always supported by Portishead Town Council. And I believe that some of the councillors have already said that they will be there. Obviously, we can't compel councillors to go. They're residents; they can do what they want. But I'm sure that there will be some councillors there. These meetings have the capacity to be very constructive and useful meetings where we all get together and we talk about things that really matter to this town. And I do hope in the spirit of what Heather Toms is trying to do, that's what we get, a very constructive meeting. And if we do, I think the town will be richer for it. So I welcome her moves, and yes, I certainly will be supporting it, and I'm sure the town council will as well.
Sorry, just to interrupt. This is not that meeting. That meeting's been and gone. It had to be held between certain months of the year, and yes, you can tick a
So-
box to say.
Sorry,
so
sorry,
this is,
Chris,
this is,
let me just explain. There's an annual meeting.
I know that,
Yeah,
I know the
which-
law relating to it.
Which is enshrined in law, and then there's just the parish residents meeting, which can be called at any time. So we're not talking about the Pram meeting, we're talking about a different meeting.
We're talking about a
I've
meeting that
got
Heather
that.
is calling on her own behalf as a goodwill gesture. By the council calling it, you're suddenly going to make it a political meeting. We do not want a political meeting. By all means, the councillors come along as members of the public, and we hope you do, because if questions are raised, you are in the best position to answer them. But if you try and assert yourselves on the meeting, it's going to be a serious own goal. This needs to be conciliatory.
Chris, I think that's exactly what I just said. So I commend you for your support of this. I support it. The council supports it. Let's hope it's a great meeting.
So is everybody else able to say they're supporting it rather than just Roger?
I've spoken to Heather already. I'm more than happy to come along. It's great. The more interactions we have with residents, it's fantastic. Yeah, but
You go on.
could just finish. Yeah, I'm more than happy to come along. But if there is, abuse of people being held around, I shall be leaving. Okay.
Absolutely. I think everybody's of that spirit. But if we could just are we able to put it on the website just so we can make more people aware it's happening? You don't think we should? We can sort that out afterwards. We'll finance it privately if necessary.
Sorry, I'm just checking the legalities, making sure that we've got it right at this end. That's all. Just bear with me.
Well, all we want to do is we've hired the hall, so surely the meeting can take place.
Yeah,
If you guys decide not to back it, fair enough.
Sorry,
And we'll pay it
I'm
privately.
just trying to get some information on answering your question.
I don't
Just
really
give us a second.
understand the delay.
Okay, so I believe it's not a duly convened residents parish meeting. It's just a meeting of residents called by Heather Toms. Okay, so my apologies. I thought she was calling an official residents meeting, but clearly not. I've checked with the clerk. We can still provide as a gesture of goodwill the hall for free, and we are happy to promote that on our website. And I'm sure it will also be promoted on social media as well. Thank you for
Just to
give
confirm,
me a
this
moment
is
to confirm.
Heather's meeting. I'm just to be the voice today because she's on holiday. But on her behalf, thank you. And I think it's a wise move. Turn it off.
Thank you. Who's next? Yeah, come on.
My name's Laura Porter. Please use my name in the minutes. I began my participation in this meeting online because I'd submitted a question, and as I'm on my own with my two boys, I knew it could be tricky to get down here. But when I was signed in online, my 8-year-old was listening to the conversation. And he said, "Why are you listening?" And I said, "Well, they're talking about the buses and I want to ask something." And it was my 8-year-old that said, "We should be there. We should go down." So we travelled down to be here in person on my 8-year-old's request. That then prompted him, listening to North Somerset, to ask lots of questions about the buses. So my 8-year-old has also had an opportunity to speak face to face with those officers, and we're looking to get in touch again with them because of my 8-year-old being able to be here. This is all off the cuff. I had not planned on saying any of this, but I'm really grateful to Isaac for saying that we should be here in person. And then when my 9-year-old realised why we were all here and what we were talking about. He said, "Mummy, you must tell them about the broken drain." Today on the way home from school, he was on his scooter. He went over and he's really badly hurt himself. And he said that it's broken. I always nearly hit it. And today I hit it. He said, "Make sure you tell them they need to fix that." So thank you, Josh, for raising your concerns tonight as well. And it's just got me thinking, is there any scope for a kids council, a kids voice, because they are stakeholders too. And I think that when you hear directly from children as young as this, I think it does put a very different spin on it when a grumpy grown-up comes and says, "You're making my life a nightmare because my kids are giving me grief about all the things that are stressing me out." So I'm just chucking that in the mix off the cuff. Is there any scope for a kids council at some point in the future? Then I thought, should there be, what are our behaviour expectations? What would you write into a behaviour policy for a kids council? What would it look like? What would you say differently the way people have been speaking to each other tonight? Would we be happy to let our kids speak to each other that way? Now I'm going to move on to what I actually submitted in advance, but that's just food for thought off the cuff. I'm a resident of West Ward. I note from the agenda that we have lost a councillor. When our ward recently lost a different councillor who resigned after their work commitments changed, I wasn't aware about the resignation, a rising vacancy, or the option of requesting a by-election until it was too late. I just didn't know. I was ignorant of that being a possibility. The replacements had already been co-opted by the time I found out that the person had gone. And this happened despite me being someone who tries to stay informed of what's going on. So please will Portishead Town Council commit to write to the West Ward residents this time to ensure that everyone knows they have the right to choose a by-election instead of waiting for co-option. And if you choose not to write to the residents, I understand that there are costs involved with that. Could you confirm which alternative platforms you'll use to let residents know their options? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. I'd like to maybe defer to the clerk for a second, because there is a legal procedure that's followed when a councillor is or vacates their seat, as is happening here. So could you just explain to us what that procedure is?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there is a very specific procedure that has to be followed. We have to notify North Somerset Council that a vacancy has arisen. They issue us with a very specific notice that has to be displayed within that ward for, I think it's 14 days. And that has to be displayed in specific places. So it's notice boards. We also put it on our website. We send it out on social media as well. And at your request, we will try and get that out as much as we can within that ward. After those number of days, if an election hasn't been called, we are then allowed to go to a co-option. And that's when further notices go out. If an election is called, then it's over to North Somerset and they will do the advertising, etc., for that election. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say most wards contain quite a few thousand people or homes. Sending a letter out to every single one would probably be very onerous and quite expensive for the council, especially as I note that postage has just gone up again. That could be quite a few £1,000s on top of the money that we have to incur in holding an election anyway. So probably not possible to send a letter out to everybody, but I think we can all probably do a little bit better in making sure that when these things do happen, that the message is out there a little bit better. I mean, we know it's in the places it needs to be in, but maybe we could all just do our bit to promote it on social media as well, just to try and make sure that everybody gets or has an opportunity to get that message.
Perhaps even some volunteers to door knock or just be a human being, just with something to spread the word as well, as I said, because I was surprised that I missed that last time it happened. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come to the microphone for that one? Thank you.
You mentioned social media. You said that a couple of times today. We have got a local newspaper, North Somerset Times. Have you thought about contacting the editor, Tim Letherby, and ask him about putting this on, through the local newspaper?
Yeah, the clerk tells me that that's part of the normal procedure to do that.
I don't think I saw it last time, Wendy. I definitely didn't see it because I look at that from cover to cover.
I'll follow that up and we'll make sure that there's a notice in there.
That'd be
It really
brilliant.
is.
Yeah, because apparently Tim wants to do everything he can now about speaking truth to power. Thank you.
Who would like to go next? It's going to be a long one tonight, isn't it? Hmm?
I'm Jan Probets and I'm representing Portishead Senior Forum, and I've been here lots of times before. I'm asking the same questions and you're still not coming back to me. I don't know who I gave 3 copies of this to last time, but you were one, Roger. And you promised me that you would come back with some answers. The other 2, I don't remember who I gave them to, but nobody did. So shall I just remind you what I asked?
Please do.
Right, what I said last time, and this was at the council meeting in January, that I'd asked before some questions, but you just said, or the clerk wrote and said that that they felt this was now closed without answering any of the things I'd asked them. I likened that to the Bates versus the post office, because that's what it is starting to sound like, isn't it, with all of it? So we asked at the time for some proof that a study was undertaken prior to allowing Gordano Civic Society to take over the walls and the floor space in the hall. I must say it looks very tatty in here at the moment. Really sad, isn't it, to look at it? But that wasn't what I said then. About the large obstacles you were storing here and these maps that are so shiny, they're horrendous. So when we asked why the large railway box was there and who had allowed it, you answered it's here because the WCMP Railway Group are dedicated to preservation of the railway. And I said, what next to train? You know, it's totally inappropriate in a hall that you've got for hire. Totally inappropriate. You know, what has that got to do with hiring out to the public? No, look at you all. So you told fibs, you told lies that you were caught out on. And I said at the end of it, it should not be that the customers paying to hire the room are having to work around all these obstacles, and you need to listen to what is being said to you. I have looked at the rates you charge for the hire of the hall, and I have asked you to confirm the Gordano Civic Society, who have offloaded all this paperwork and maps for the privilege you have said they do. I have asked you to point me in the direction of how the cost is calculated, or the meeting minutes where it was discussed. Now, I've read the minutes now for a lot of all the things. I've had some time, I've sat and read them. There's no mention anywhere of all this that I can see.
So I need you to tell me where this was discussed formally in a group. You should know. So just point me in the right direction so I can see how these decisions were made. I asked you how the railway group were charged for storage. I can't find any reference anywhere. I asked why you'd allowed what is a permanent arrangement with Gordano Civic Society, a minority group, to take over the hall here with no consultation with the people of Portishead. I asked who was sympathetic to the Civic Society because I knew there were people at that time who were. I said about the Sandy Tebbit, renaming the hall the Sandy Tebbit Hall, when most of Portishead, in all honesty, have no idea who she is. And altering the history of an already historic hall here. It's not right. It isn't right to do things like that without asking the bigger public, isn't it? Just because a few odd councillors thought it would be a good idea, it's not right. So that was broadly the last time. What I'm saying today is, following on from and after getting no reply to my last questions from the 16th of January, I am asking why I cannot get answers to perfectly legitimate questions on how decisions were made regarding the use of the folk hall by the Civic Society and their friends on Portishead Town Council. 3 of the councillors present that night took away a copy of my notes promising answers, but nothing. What is wrong with you? You know, why can't you answer simple questions? I've gone to the trouble of writing it all down. You can all read, you know the answers. Tell me. The folk hall should be a clear space venue for people to hire, not a captive space audience for the Civic Society. These vanity projects are impacting on an important group of people who hire and pay for the use of the hall on a regular basis. You have said that the Railway Group and the Civic Society pay for the use of the hall. We are charged by the hour on a set rate, and I believe other hirers pay the same. Can you tell me what the storage rate is, as in the Railway Group, and the rate if I want information plastered all around the walls? Can you give me the rate for that? If you are not going to remove the mats after we have asked, we had somebody here one day and one of your group was in our meeting, and he came over and said to me afterwards that your chap had pointed out to him something on that mat, which was really nice, but he couldn't actually see what he was talking about because they're so shiny. So even up close, you can't see properly on them. So they're not in the right place, are they? They're really bad. With our screen here, we can't see a darn thing with those things glowing away there. So, if you're not going to remove the mats after you have asked, then say what the Civic Society wants is more important than hirers of the hall. If you are not going to remove large pieces of outdoor stuff belonging to the Railway Group, then say the Railway Group's inappropriate stuff is more important than our hirers' well-being. It's called being straight and not trying to sidestep these questions. I hope the answers I have asked for previously and have mentioned here will now be dealt with openly, honestly, and with a willingness to tell the truth. Otherwise, this brings the integrity of all the councillors into question. On a safety issue, I would point out that inside the main entrance door, you have a fire extinguisher stood on the floor against a large piano with the piano stool sticking out from underneath. Trip hazards everywhere. If you do trip on these, you will be catapulted into the railway. Who thought that was a good idea? Mike, the hall manager, tells me that you stack chairs around it as well. What safety rules don't apply to councils? Surely amongst all those staff, you have somebody responsible for health and safety. Count this as an official complaint and do an assessment. We had a bizarre episode earlier on when our next forum meeting was cancelled with a note for us to rearrange for the following week because you had staff on holiday. After our president and chairman came to remind you of the difficulty of booking speakers, mainly done a year in advance, and with small hope that they will be free to change at the last minute, and then getting hold of 60+ people to tell them about these changes, you made an effort and the staff were found to organise things for the original date.
With a turnover of 1 million and a wage bill exceeding £500,000, you should have plenty of staff to help out when emergencies occur. Your customers should never be aware about small problems that are easily overcome. I hope we were not being singled out for any other reason. So would anyone like now to take another copy of these queries from the last time and here and actually answer them for the Forum Society?
Please leave me a copy of those. Yeah, I was just going to say, it must be really frustrating for you to come along to these meetings time and time and time again and ask the same questions and feel that you're not getting the answers that you want.
It's not about the answers I want, Roger, is it? It's just an answer.
Yeah,
A proper answer.
I checked with the clerk. We believed that you'd had an answer, but clearly whatever the answer we gave you at the time wasn't what you wanted,
Well, it's not about what I want, is it?
or wasn't sufficient for your
what, I
needs.
found you really patronising in some of your email answers. I mean, I said about the screen, you know, not being able to see here, and the answer was then there's a screen the other way. That is so patronising and rude, isn't it? You know, we're proper citizens
I was going to say
here.
that this whole situation predates me on the council, so I don't have the answers to hand to give you, and I believe somebody else was in this chair when you asked before.
Yeah, I do think the chairman took one, but I did remember you because of Tanya. I did remember.
But yeah, I
had one,
I was under the impression that that it had been dealt with. Clearly, it hasn't. I would really like to get this one sorted. You know what? I can't tell you that I can get you the answer that you want, but I can tell you that that I will do whatever I can to get you an answer, and maybe we can even sit down and have a chat about a compromise. I don't know, but I mean, let's open up a line of discussion outside of this meeting so we can see if we can resolve something, because it's clearly unacceptable for you to keep coming here asking us over and over again and us not to respond in the way that you expect.
It is. It's annoying, isn't it? Because we're at the stage now where we think we need to complain about you as a group. I don't want to do that. I just want you to, you know, I mean, there's official ways we can make you answer these questions. You don't need to make me do that. You need to just answer them. You're right. So yeah, whatever you suggest.
Shall I come and grab that from you?
I've got one here. I'll give it. There you go, staff. There's 2 more there if you want some. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks.
Next. Sorry, Paul, carry on.
I'll try and be very quick. Paul Maltby, happy for my name to go into the minutes. I must admit, I felt for quite a while that certainly I'm not welcome at these meetings, and I think other people probably feel the same. I now know that I'm not welcome at these meetings because I've received an email from a councillor, and I'll just read some of it. The bottom line in this matter is that Portishead Town Council do not wish to have any of you attending any further meetings. None of your colleagues or yourself have any constructive input to council affairs, or for that matter, to make Portishead a better place to live in. Good riddance to you, Mr. Maltby. Now that came from a councillor purporting to be from Portishead Town Council. At the end of my speech, I will come back and see if any councillors here wish to distance themselves from those comments. Behaviour policy, just very quickly, as I understood it, it needs 2 councillors to activate the behaviour policy.
Yeah, I believe
so if a member of public...
sorry, just let me explain that just to be certain. So 2 councillors would need to raise a concern for it to be dealt with via the new board that we've just set up to look into that. But only to raise a concern, not to make a judgment. It would be the board that makes any judgment.
So a member of the public, or 2 or 20 or 100 members of the public, there's no way without the support of 2 councillors that they could ever activate the concerns.
Shall I answer that one? No, you can. You're perfectly entitled to making a complaint. That's what there was already a behaviour. There's already the policy that Chris mentioned, the councillors' policy, behaviour policy. We already have one, and if you make a complaint, that may be assessed by North Somerset Council. So there's a standard. There's already a standard process and procedure in place. So you're perfectly welcome to make a complaint about a councillor, and it will go through that process basically. Okay.
But not your policy.
No. There's already a policy and a process in place that deals with it. So we and all that would happen. We would refer you to that complaints policy, which you're perfectly welcome to use.
Okay, I'm trying to be quick. So still on the behaviour policy, let's just imagine for a moment that somebody in this room was politely speaking during public participation. And let's imagine that a member of the public stood up from his chair, threw his chair backwards, marched towards the person who was speaking very aggressively. He shouted in that member of the public's face. He stood in a very aggressive stance. He then threatened to bully this person who happened to be an old man, like he had done before. And then, as the words were, until the old man before was shaking with fear. He continues to shout. He's then joined by somebody else who also stands very aggressively with his hands on his hips, surrounding the person. Would that be against the behaviour policy of Portishead Town Council?
Sure answer is yes. And if you want to make a complaint about it, you should.
Well, I'm glad you agree that it probably is, and maybe 2 councillors might want to make a complaint about it.
So you are welcome to make a complaint to the Standards Committee. You're clearly alluding to what you believe to be a breach of standards, and that's what the Standards Committee is for. When councillors breach standards, regardless of who they are, a complaint can be made to the Standards Committee. It's dealt with not by Portishead Town Council, but by North Somerset Council, and they set up their own board and they deal with that. So please, if you believe that that standards have been breached, do put in a complaint to North Somerset. The numbers on our website, it's also the details of how to contact them are also in the behaviour policy.
Actually, I was merely giving an example and wonder whether that would be against a behaviour policy. But anyway, I'm conscious of the time, but let me just come back to my letter that I received. Is there any councillors here who wish to distance themselves from those comments? Yeah.
I don't recognise any of those words.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what you're alluding to there.
So this is an email from somebody. I'm not allowed to mention names apparently. He's not here tonight. He has got a T in his name apparently because he was quite. The bottom line in this matter is that Portishead Town Council do not wish to have any of you attending any further meetings. None of your colleagues or yourself have any constructive input to council affairs, or for that matter, to make Portishead a better place to live in. Good riddance to you, Mr. Maltby. Yours faithfully, the Vice Chairman. An email I received.
So as I say, I don't recognise those words. I clearly haven't seen that email. However, if you believe that it's a breach of standards, then there is a procedure for dealing that, and I would encourage you to send that in.
No. My question was, is there any councillors in this room who wish to distance themselves from that email? That came from a vice chairman purporting to be from Portishead Town Council.
Can I ask councillors if any of them would like to make a comment on this?
If you should make a complaint, that would be my only comment. If you feel that that's necessary, that is the process. So please do so.
Sorry, those are not my comments and I don't stand by those comments, Paul.
I
I don't think anyone thinks they're appropriate, but they're not appropriate. But the policy is the thing you need to do is make a complaint.
No, I'm asking whether if that came from a Portishead Town Councillor purporting to be from Portishead Town Council, is there anybody who wishes to distance themselves from it? We've had some councillors, which I really appreciate your honesty, and I really appreciate you you being honest and upstanding.
And I was just going to say, you say it came from Portishead Town Council, but I actually don't know that because I'm not aware, you know, I haven't heard that before, haven't seen it, and therefore I think it's quite difficult for any of us to actually, you know, we can say what I just said.
But the email says, yeah, Jenny, I appreciate what you're saying, but the email that was sent to me says the bottom line in this matter is at Portishead Town Council. So it purports to come from the Town Council.
So can
sorry, is it my turn to speak?
Sorry,
or
Bob.
Am I getting interrupted
No,
here?
no, Bob, can you just bear with me a second, please? Just bear with me a second. I think it's quite clear here that that is not the view of Portishead Town Council. That is the view of a councillor who wrote to you. Yep, and I understand what you're trying to do, and we're all trying to say here that we think there's a procedure here that should be followed to make sure that we do everything correctly. And that procedure is where there's been a breach of standards, where you believe there's been a breach of standards, because I wouldn't want to put words into your mouth, but where you believe that to be the case, there is a procedure that you can follow, and I would ask you to consider following that procedure. Certainly, that is not an official communication from Portishead Town Council. That is not a statement from us. That comes from one individual who happens to be a councillor on this council.
I appreciate Jenny, Alan, Emma. I think Marion was also going to
say something, Chairman, as well, just because I know I can see there's a lot of grievances historically here. And as a new councillor who is, you know, I don't come with any of this baggage, I should say. So we do have that meeting with Heather. And I was one of the first councillors to say I will attend that. Sorry. And so I will be coming to that meeting to hear all your voices, a collective voice as one, and then I can bring all of those back to the council meetings and address each one of those, because I don't have all of the experience and knowledge of everybody else around this in this forum. So I will come to that meeting with a clean sheet for you to hear all of your you know, everything you have to say, and to bring that back and completely indifferent, to be a third party, well, to be a person without any kind of previous experience or grievance or any kind of history. So hopefully we can go forward, and as a member of the committee of the behaviour policy now as well, somebody completely independent of any side, hopefully you'll see me as somebody you can approach and talk to and bring your story, anything to, because I'm here to happy to help. And again, I'm a resident of Portishead who just wants to help Portishead. And I think everybody here, whether on the council committee or as a public member, we all just want Portishead to thrive. That's why we're all here. So hopefully we can clean the sheet and start fresh.
I thank you for your comments. I'm assuming that you also distance yourself from these comments. So we've got Tim, Mariam, Emma, Alan, and Jenny, who is.
Sorry, Paul, David would like to speak.
Well,
switch myself off. Those would not be words I would use.
Also, I would never use those words as well, and that's why I think you should make a complaint.
Hello, how do we speak on this from online, please? There's nothing to put an hand on. Can I speak online?
Yes, please proceed. I think you normally put your hand up, but if you can't find the hand up button.
No, I can't find the hand up thing. There's just nothing at all.
best
So I got no choice but to interrupt like that.
Sorry,
I'm
just bear with
sorry.
me a second. Let me just ask Paul. Paul, have you finished?
It's to do with Paul's
Yeah,
comments, actually.
I have finished, but because we've got a behaviour policy, I would hope there's two councillors here tonight who would want to contact me, find out the complete email, and then perhaps they would like to begin the behaviour policy. It could be the first ever case, couldn't it?
Thank you very much, Paul. Sorry, who is it online?
My name's Ian Smith.
Ian, please.
I don't mind my name being in the meeting minutes or anything like that. I've been, I very rarely attend council meetings. It's just something I've got into recently. And I've been listening to what's been said tonight. It's all very interesting. Listening to what Paul was saying then, it just made me question. I was thinking, well, tonight you've all proposed and seconded and voted unanimously on introducing a behaviour policy for the town council, and someone's just come up with a grievance about an email they've received from a purported email they've received from a councillor and a vice chairman at that, and there doesn't seem to be. It would be a good opportunity to actually put that that policy that you've just voted on into practice. So I would hope to see a couple of councillors put their hands up and say, "Hey, yeah, let's investigate what Mr. Maltby is talking about, and investigate, is there a behaviour problem there that needs to be resolved?" That's what I'd like to say.
I'm sure we're happy to do that. So I'll take an action to make that happen. That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've been at this, 2 hours now? Yep. Could I propose, before we go any further, we just take a couple of minutes break, if anyone would like it, and then come back here in about 5 minutes, if we can do that. Thank you.